Hello, Chris from My Stamp Lady here, and I'm so glad you could join me. This is the last in my series of embossing tips that I'm doing for this week. And what I did for embossing is I used it a couple of ways, but you can see these lovely flowers in the background. I basically made my own designer series paper. And so I'll show you how to do the first part, and it's a little takeoff of what I did yesterday. Just a couple of different tips of what I did a little differently. So I put my embossing buddy down so that the ink will not get picked up where I don't want it. And now I'm going to ink up this flower from the Oh Hello set. One thing about doing this technique is you want to make sure that you have stamped your images fairly close. And I'm actually going to stamp over the stems so that I can get it close. You want them right next to each other because when you go to use the paper, it's amazing how far apart they seem. So we're getting right in there, and I know this is really difficult for you to see because I'm using the Versamark pad, which is showing up slightly pink, mostly because I must have had somebody, or even me maybe, that used a pink ink before it and then did not clean it off. The Versamark will pick up any ink that's left over from a different cleaning. Okay, so I'm going in here, I'm getting my flowers really close together because I would want to not leave any part of this uninked. Okay, so I have that all inked up, pulling in my clear powder. And let's just sprinkle the entire piece. Okay, if you have any spots that you got a little over inking on, now is the time to look for it. Take that powder off. Now I'm going to heat this up on my heat tool. Okay, heated it up, let it cool. Now I'm going to take a sponge dauber and my crumb cake ink pad, and I'm just going to, in circles, ink up my paper. And now you should be able to see all of those flowers popping through. If you want a more dark inking, use a brayer. You'll get more ink coverage on there this way, but I kind of want it soft. So I'm just grabbing ink with a sponge dauber, going around. So I have that part done, and just like yesterday, so you can see through all my embossed flowers. Here's where the twist is. I'm going to pull in this is my crafting ironing board. So I'll pull this in, and then I'm going to pull in 2 pieces of just copy paper, placing that down there, covering up my piece, and then I've got an iron. I don't know, I have it on about 5 here, and what I'm doing is ironing over the surface. That's melting all of that powder, or that embossing powder, off of my cardstock, and you could probably see that it's gone into my paper. Make sure I have it all off. And so that takes all of that off. So you're wondering, why might I want to do that? Well, the biggest reason that I decided to do this is because if I wanted to stamp over this, I couldn't, because that embossing would still resist. And if you pull in my piece, my finished piece, you see that I stamped over that embossed area, where if I would try to do this stamping over it without that with that embossing still on the top, it would not allow me to put that ink down. So I did an example, and this is why you wanted to stamp nice and close together. If you're going in and picking out like a little square piece here, if anywhere where you have, even right there, I have a little bit of a larger space, it's not going to show up, you're going to have blank spaces. So you want to stamp together as close as possible. And I actually punched out my images before I did my little images so that I could kind of get the background that I wanted, or the images where I wanted. And then from there, you could just, so now I could just pull in my die base pad, pull in an image, and stamp that image. And because I have taken off that embossing powder, I can stamp over it, and once it dries, it will dry on there. Otherwise it wouldn't dry on there. So then this is the the technique part of this. So I'm just going to pull this in. I finished it off by adding some of the collage curios pieces on there and then embellishing each of those. And then I matted them on the postage stamp punch and matted that with a early espresso piece, ran the ribbon through, did my no tie bow. I love this faux bow. Just did the 2 pieces. And then embossed this last part with the lacy brocade embossing folder. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me at chris@mystamplady.com. You can find all of these supplies in my online store at www.mystamplady.com. Have a great day and thanks for joining me.